Hi everyone, in this video I show you how I made a Lego cake. It consists of 3 layers of vanilla cake with buttercream and jam, and the top part is a separate piece of cake also. So I'll start off by showing you how I made the cake board. This is just a piece of green fondant and I've rolled it out to about 3mm thick, and I'm just placing it on a round cake board that's been smeared with a bit of Trex and just smoothing that out, getting out all the air bubbles. If you see any, just take a sterilised pin, pop out the air bubble and then just smooth it over again. So keep doing that until it's all flat, and then I just worked the edges a little so I could see where I needed to run the knife around, and then taking the sharp knife I'm just cutting off any of the excess fondant around the edges, ready to be trimmed with a ribbon. I then took a 7-inch cake tin and I pressed down in the centre of the fondant and I cut out that shape, as I knew my cake would be covering that part of the cake board, so I might as well save that piece of fondant for another project. I then rolled out some more fondant in the same colour and took a tiny circle cutter, and this bit took ages, but I punched out lots and lots of tiny little circles which will be the studs for the cake board. This bit also took ages, but basically I took each stud, which had dried very slightly, and painted on a tiny bit of Trex on the bottom, or I think it's vegetable fat, and then lined them up and stuck them all down. So keep going, keep going, keep going until the entire board is covered. And it took ages, but I think it was worth it. It was a nice effect. The only thing I would say is I would probably, if I was to do this cake again, place the cake on the board and then put the studs on afterwards, because I did have a little bit of issue with some of them pinging off every time you touched them and I had to reapply them. But I think it was worth it anyway. And I just gave it a little steam to get off any corn flour that was stuck to it. That's a new Christmas present, so I wanted to use it. Okay, and the next part was a mould I purchased from, it was just Amazon, and it's got tiny little Lego pieces, and I've just brushed in a little bit of cornstarch or corn flour and taken various different coloured fondants. I pushed it into the mould, and make sure you push it right in and take off any excess. And then for this one, because it was so flexy, I turned it over and I made sure that the shape of the Lego block was still sort of sharp edged. I then took off any excess fondant, smoothed it over to make sure there was no rough edges, and I placed that in the freezer for about 30 minutes, and that just helps to pop out the fondant without sort of misshaping it too much. So do that with all different types of colours and leave them to dry for about 24 hours I left them. Now this is me stacking the 8-inch cake. Again, like I said, it was 3 layers. I have a full tutorial on how to do that, and I will leave a link below, but the basic premise is you run a thick layer of buttercream around the outer edge, put a thinner layer which is less stiff in the middle, and then add your jam on, and then just keep doing that until all 3 layers are complete. But that's important to put that dam of thicker buttercream so that it doesn't squish out and misshape your fondant. Then I put on a crumb coat of white chocolate ganache, and once that was complete, pop that into the fridge for 30 minutes. And whilst I was doing that, or that was drying, I then took the little, it was a 6-inch cake, this one, which is the stud part of the head, and placed that on a cake board also, and covered that with white chocolate ganache, just a crumb coat. And this is the final layer of white chocolate ganache on the 8-inch cake. I forgot to say I did put that on a cake board as well, and I slightly rounded the edges and the bottom part of the cake, as if you look at Lego head, it's not perfectly right, sort of, you know, perfectly straight on the edges. So when you come to scrape back here, as you see, I'm using a piece of acetate and just making it curve around the top and bottom edges a bit, so it's a sort of a nice smooth finish. And then just to give it one last smooth over, I took a hot palette knife and just ran that around the edges as well, just to give it that extra bit of smoothness. You can see a little bit of excess cake board at the bottom. What I've done is I put the cake in the fridge and brought it out, and then just basically picked it up and cut off that excess cake board. And then the same process with the little stud for the top of the head as well. And I'll leave a link below for recipes for buttercream, vanilla cake and the white chocolate ganache too. Okay, so they were put back into the fridge, and that allowed me to roll out the yellow fondant to about 3mm thick. And then I placed that over the top of the 8-inch cake and smoothed out any air bubbles from the top to begin with using a fondant smoother in my hands. And then pulling out the pleats or skirt part of the bottom of the fondant, I then began to smooth down the edges. And once that was done, but not fully smoothed, I then cut off the excess fondant at the bottom just to make it easier to work with. And using the fondant smoother, I was able to, because it was sort of slightly curved, I was able to push in the base of the fondant to make that also sort of curve around the edge. And then smoothed out a final time with the fondant smoother, and then cut away the rest of the excess fondant that had built up. And you can see here I'm using a pizza cutter. That's much easier to use, I feel anyway, when you're doing a round shape. And then taking a piece of fondant in my hand, the same colour, I smoothed over the sort of corner edges of the cake. As if you do it with a flat fondant smoother, it sort of gives you a bit of an angle and you don't want that. Okay, then taking some white ganache, I then put a dollop in the middle of the cake board and carefully shuffled the cake over and plopped that on the top as carefully as I could. This is where I had a little trouble with some of those little studs that got in the way. And then the same again with the little stud, just cover that in some yellow fondant, smooth that down. This was much easier to cover than the larger cake. Cutting off the excess fondant, I then transferred this to whatever you've got really. A tin or a jar would be fine, as long as you can place the cake on it and smooth it down so that the fondant sort of curls under the cake board a bit. And then smooth that down as best as I could. It was really hard to work with a smaller cake because it was so light and was sort of shifting everywhere. And then cut off the excess fondant underneath. Okay, I then placed in 4 smoothie straws into the 8-inch cake. Sorry, 3 smoothie straws into the 8-inch cake. Pushed them down so that they were level with the top of the cake. And then just smeared on a little bit of white chocolate ganache and placed the little stud on the top. Oh, I don't know what happened there, it disappeared. This is the mouth part. What I've done is I took the template of a Lego face from Google, and I've just sketched it myself, and then I'm cutting out all the elements. So here, just cutting out the white teeth and then placing that on my fondant and cutting out the shape. And then once that part was complete, I've done exactly the same with the outer part of the mouth, which was all excuse me, which was all black, and used the back of a piping tip, a large piping tip, and cut out the eyes. And the same with the little red tongue. And then I smeared a little bit of Trex on the back and was able to place the white teeth onto the black fondant mouth. I really like using Trex because that allows you to shift it if you make any mistakes, which I invariably do. And then just neatened it up with a little knife to get it all straight. And there's the little tongue going on. And then it's just a case of sticking that onto the face of your Lego man. And again, I've done that with Trex. And then the little eyes too. This is the face of Emmett I took from the movie, the Lego movie, in case anyone wanted to use that as well. I then took all the little fondant Lego pieces I'd made, and using a little bit of the whipped white ganache, sort of just stuck them randomly all over the little Lego head. You can hide any mistakes you've made as well, which is lovely, until that looked pleasing to the eye. So keep on going until that's done. And that is pretty much it, really. So it's relatively simple design, and quite easy to make. And it was a birthday cake I made it for, and I think it turned out really well, and the recipient really liked it, so that was good. But if you do enjoy these videos and tutorials, they're not always perfect, but it's me learning, so hopefully if I make any mistakes, that'll help you not to. So if you like them and you'd like to see any more, do check out my channel. It's not just sort of cakes and designs like that. There's savoury bits as well, and lots of other home bakes. So give it a look and subscribe if you can, and I really appreciate your support and for watching. Thanks very much. Bye.